Okay. I was going to go over starter maintenance. So actually, I'm taking this existing starter jar that kind of bubbled over because I had too much in there and it grew up too much and went over. So I'm going to transfer some of that into a fresh jar and show you what I do. Because I think I usually try to change out my jar probably every couple months. So but it seems like it's time. So, so ideally you're doing equal parts, 1 to 1 to 1. Some people get all scientific on that. Typically I don't really follow that rule all that much, but what I'm going to do is show you more or less the ideal ratios. And so, but ideally you're starting with um, equal parts existing starter, so you have your existing good bacteria already in place. So this is 50 grams of existing starter, and then we tare. So and then we'll add 50 grams of just all-purpose flour. So everyone has little differences and variations and such on how they feed their starter. Little tips on, some people say that using like rye flour makes it stronger. I don't know. I've never done that. I've always just used all-purpose flour and it's worked just fine for me. So so 50 grams of all-purpose flour, and we tare again. And then we're just going to add 50 grams of water. So just to do equal parts, we'll mix it up, scrape the sides, and then I'll move the little band. You can make a dry erase marker. You can do a rubber band. You can have one of these little elastic bands. But basically, you just mark where you're at, and so you know where you're at when you're remixing it, and then be able to watch it grow. Ideally, you see it double in size, so it's got some good growth, and then once it I wait until it peaks and actually starts to fall back down a little bit, and then I make my bread from there. So my theory is that by the point that it starts to drop back down, then it's going to be hungry and it's going to start feeding off of that flour and stuff you're going to put in for your dough. So, but there you have it. And this guy just lives on the counter. So, uh, thank you. Okay, cleaned up my marking band, so I can put that on there, and then you can kind of track however much it's going to grow. Um, but something else is how often do I feed my starter? And I'm not the greatest about it. Sometimes I'll feed as much as I need for when I need to make bread, and then I'll sometimes let it go a couple days without feeding it. But you kind of watch it. If it starts to getting like a little black layer of liquid across the top of it, that's called hooch, which is essentially it's alcohol. But if it gets to that point, try to watch it, because what you can do is you can pour off that hooch and take a little bit of the existing starter that's still underneath there and mix it in with your flour and your water, and you can resurrect a good starter again. So it's not too late if it gets to that black layer. But if it gets moldy, then toss it out and start with a fresh one. So, but otherwise, yeah. So ideally, at least for my recipe, 100 grams of starter for a loaf of bread. So yeah, so we just created 150 grams of starter here. So that'll give us 100 grams of they'll give us 100 grams of starter for one loaf of bread, and then it'll still give us 50 grams of starter to be able to perpetuate and hold more starter.